like if there was a Wild West type neighborhood for white people, white people are shooting people the same way people are getting shot in the south side of Chicago, they would be freaking the fuck out. Can you imagine if there was a place like that? Like if Tucson, Arizona was just like shootouts in the street. I'm like, what on a weekend of gang violence in Chicago is occasionally stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning numbers.
Yeah, there can be like 50 people shot in a weekend at its worst.
Imagine if that same scenario was playing out in right-wing neighborhoods, in right-wing all-white neighborhoods, if they were basically like fucking Jesse James in it and just out there shooting each other. We have very different discussion.
What would happen, though? Would it be more sympathy for them, or would it be more law enforcement because there's less guilt involved? It would be something different, that's for sure.
Especially if they grew up in good neighborhoods. Imagine if they're like people from good neighborhoods with good education, like middle class, like no excuses.
Well,
and then
there's always been this like insane galling asymmetry of like you're caught with a dime bag in the hood. Meanwhile, how many fucking Harvard kids are smoking weed in their dorm rooms?
Oh, but even better yet, how about the crack laws? Dr. Carl Hart is outlined this so perfectly because
that's the guy that does heroin, right?
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a fascinating person. But one of the things that he has said, Dr. Hart said, like, it's the same physiological effect as cocaine. But if you get arrested, completely different sentencing structure.
Yeah.
If you get arrested with crack, there's minimum sentences that they have to put you away for. If you get arrested for coke, it's fucking nothing.
Yeah, that's probably the most galling example I know of a allegedly colorblind law that ends up having a massive disparate impact on people of color.
Massive. I'm sure white people do crack too. I know white people have done crack.
Yeah.
But the difference is that has infested and destroyed black communities, and they know that. And so to handle the overwhelming amount of crime, instead of addressing it at a root level, they just decide to just put everybody in a cage.
Right.
Which is crazy.
So one difficulty with addressing it is, in a way, you made this analogy before of we spend all this money overseas trying to reshape and rebuild other countries, but we don't spend it at home. I think that analogy, it works in more ways than one. The other way it's useful is that often when we try to spend monies and reshape these countries, in the Middle East, for instance, no matter how much money we spend, it doesn't seem to make a lasting impact. Like we can't just rebuild the country, rebuild the culture of the country by throwing money at it, because it's not that simple. I think that same lesson is another one of the difficulties with creating healthy, vibrant communities out of communities that are intergenerational poverty, intergenerational violence, which is that, okay, we can get a bunch of government bureaucrats and people outside the community that want to do good and throw a bunch of money at community programs and so forth. But if it doesn't feel like it's coming from credible people in the community, it may have very little impact. Role models in general are very important, but they usually have to come from the place you're from in order to matter to you. Right? Like me as a black guy who grew up privileged in the suburbs in New Jersey, how's the average inner city kid looking for a role model to have a better life is not really going to be able to look to me just because we're the same skin color and say, well, if he could do it, I could do it.
Right.
It's not going to work because I'm not from where he's from. In order to feel like you can actually do something, most people need a person that is from where they're from, has a similar background to them, and nevertheless went on to go to college, went on to, make six figures or something. It's like when you see that, then it actually can change you for the most part. And I know this guy Bob Woodson who runs the Woodson Center, and the kind of outreach work that he does, it really acknowledges that principle, which is he will find people in the community, former gang members, pastors at churches, and sort of work with them in a way that, they know the community, they feel, their work feels credible. It actually has a much bigger chance of making a difference And this is one challenge with getting government to sort of throw money at the problem is if they don't understand that principle, I'm often skeptical that interventions are going to work as well as they could.